Hello, I'm Pastor Hilly. Before I start this video, a quick reminder to please like, share, and subscribe this video to help out the channel. Thank you so very, very much. A comment I hear regularly is, "No offense." Typically, this comes in the context of a friend saying, "Yeah, I just hate how all religious people take advantage of others using a corrupt system to hold down the disenfranchised and steal their money. I mean, no offense, you don't, but, all of the other ones do." No offense taken, I guess? No, seriously, no offense taken. I get it. There are very public records of the worst of clergy behavior and the atrocities of the church throughout the ages. I am very aware of that. And to be honest, for a lot of my friends, I am their one token religious friend. And that is a badge that I wear proudly. See, I find that there's an interesting dynamic that occurs when people whose conception of the clergy, that is formed by images of blistering political pundits, sex offenders, and extortionists preying on the weak, end up in a conversation with me, someone who claims the same title, pastor, but yet lives a very, very different life. Now, it doesn't take too long on any social media platform or on any news source to realize that the clergy is not really represented all that well. On a spectrum, pastors seem to either be shouting and sweltering Southern evangelicals or people striving for an amorphous presence and attempting to be so omnipresent that they don't actually have a message or a point, or so it seems. In truth, however, I believe that these are the extremes, and that in the middle is a majority, and that majority is a group of people who do not align with either one of those extremes and does not feel represented by either one of them. What happens, however, like in other venues, is that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And to be honest, either of those extremes creates better car crash news, better fear-mongering, and better TikTok reels. So that is what gets shared and retweeted. The issue here is the difference between what is perceived as the norm versus what the norm actually is. This isn't just a problem for the church. This happens across culture, across the board. Let's consider some examples. Not all players in the NFL are convicted rapists, though some of them are, and that hits the headlines. Not all politicians are crooks, but some are, and that hits the headlines. Cars are not lit on fire after every single college bowl game, but sometimes that does happen, and not all water balloons are filled with water. Some are filled with things that are far, far worse, and to be honest, that sad truth ruined my 11th birthday, but that's a story for another video. However, I feel like culturally we are taking positive steps in learning how to not throw out the baby with the bathwater in our conversations. We catch ourselves when making overarching truisms because truisms of that nature are rarely, if ever, true. A good friend of mine is a philosophy professor. When attending Baylor University in Waco, Texas for his PhD, he attended a small church there in Waco. One day a gentleman came up to him and said, "You know what the problem with philosophers is? They all think." At which point my friend politely cut him off and said, "What do you mean they all think? Have you surveyed every single one of them? Has a consensus been reached?" Of course, the man had not. No consensus had been reached. What the gentleman was doing was responding to one comment that he had heard, or a headline he had read, or even an idea that he had had independently. Yet he was framing it as though it was a bigger issue, ubiquitous to an entire group of people. Consider this. June 11th, 2019. Deputies in Naples, Florida, arrested a man for dancing naked in a McDonald's. Now, not all McDonald's patrons are naked or dance naked. But if you only hear about the exceptional or the exceptionally bad, then you might have a skewed view of what happens inside a McDonald's. And you may find yourself making comments like, you know what the problem with McDonald's is? All the naked people who are inside dancing. I mean, did that happen? Yes. Is that a true statement, that all of them were naked? Well, if all are that one, then I suppose. But generally the answer is no. The exception is not the rule. Though this kind of headline garners a lot of clicks, likes, and retweets. And so these are the kind of headlines that we seem to find everywhere. Let's consider if we do this with people or when talking about people. Comments like, why do all X people do Y? Now, these statements are hyperbolic and not true. Not all white people clap only on the 1 and the 3. I mean, we do have Jason Isabel, and he's holding it down for the rest of us. So thank you, Jason. We appreciate that. But culturally, I feel like we have taken great strides toward disassembling stereotypes so that we can see individuals for who they are, instead of responding to assumptions based on generally held notions. I think this is where we get to the idea that sometimes the first step toward inclusivity is tokenism. Taking that step from what I think about them to I have a friend who is or who does X. Creating a connection with a person from a reality outside of our personal spheres allows the idea of the other to become a real person, fleshed out, and challenge our assumptions as we meet an actual person who is or identifies with that group or community. My mother graduated high school in 1964. That's 10 years after Brown versus the Board of Education. Even though it was 10 years after the monumental ruling, my mother graduated from a high school that she identifies as segregated there in Eastern North Carolina. That fall, my mother began at Eastern Carolina University in the fall of '64. ECU had just enrolled their first and only African-American student, Laura Marie Leary, 12 months prior in the fall of 1963. When I talk to my mom about America in the 60s and 70s, she tells paradigm-shifting stories from her own life, starting with hearing about people of color who all lived on the other side of town, until she worked with one or two. But that didn't happen for her until after she graduated college. Then, as life continued, she kept meeting more and different kinds of people, developing some lifelong friendships. If we only hear about a group and never meet or interact with members of that group, then we do not have the opportunity to develop relationships with individuals. And we can find ourselves simply responding to our notions and our assumptions. When I find myself around friends who end up making some comment about how horrible, abusive, unchecked, or corrupt the church is, I hear the phrase, "but no offense," as a good thing, actually. No matter what is being reported on, good or bad, I know that I have the opportunity with my life, with my ministry, and with my friends to be a positive example of what the church could and should be. And that is being an outpost of the kingdom of God. Now, that in and of itself can look like a million different things to a million different people. And that is a conversation for another video. My point here is that I know that being in conversations with my friends as a pastor means that I can serve as a witness for that majority of people who do not feel represented by the extremists on all sides. I know that if my friends actually thought that I was as despicable, underhanded, or manipulative as they claim the church at large is, then they would probably not be friends with me in the first place, as that would feel damnable by association. As a person of faith who indeed works for the church, I take a lot of pride in simply not being a jerk in trying to connect with individuals for who and for what they are, for meeting people in their lives, for being present, and being a testament to my reality that not everyone in the church is here to judge, damn, diminish, molest, embezzle, or coerce people into things. I am here to share the good news and to remind the world that we are all going to get through this and that there is a better future waiting for all of us if we want it.